Okay, I'm so excited to record this video. I'm like way too excited. I started a career in sonography thinking that I wouldn't have to talk much to patients. Congratulations, you played yourself. I'm definitely an introvert and I do feel qualified to share on this subject and give you some insight. I'm going to paint a very clear picture of what it is like working in this field so you can see whether this is something you can deal with your personality type. And I'm going to provide some tips for surviving in this field as an introvert. Now, let's talk about first the work environment, the setup, because introverts, we like our space. Some facilities, a lot of facilities, they will have a general ultrasound room where all the sonographers sit and they write up their reports. And a lot of times these rooms aren't that big from the ones I've seen, so it can be tight. Now, on the other hand, some facilities, you will have your own room. Other people might work in that room when you're not in there, but you can have your own room. You'll bring in your patients to your room. You'll perform the exam. And once the patient leaves, you're there by yourself to write up your exams. Now, let's talk about communication with the coworkers. Regardless of what type of work environment you have, some people just like to talk. They just like to talk. Sometimes they'll come to you venting about a patient and their experience with them. Or sometimes people just be babbling about whatever is going on in their life and this and that. And sometimes we just be cracking jokes. And that helps to lighten the mood and it helps us to get through the day. So this is not all bad because sometimes we introverts, we like to talk a little bit too. We like to vent a little bit too. We babble a little bit too, depending on the subject, if we're interested in the subject. So we can't really blame the extroverted people for doing those things. Now there's communication with the other staff, the other types of staff in your facility. So that could be the front desk, the registration, there's nurses, and there's doctors. All of these people, these are the types of people you have to communicate with. A lot of times you will have to deliver preliminary reports to providers like nurse practitioners and doctors. You might have to check on the patient status with the nurses. You might have to clarify, okay, why wasn't this patient checked in? What is going on with this patient with the registration employees? And you will have to verify orders, clarify the reason for the exams with the ordering providers. A lot of times they don't order stuff the way they should be ordered. So we have to call these people and clarify. That requires us to communicate things we don't always want to do. And lastly, let's talk about the communication with patients. Some patients are very quiet. Some patients just sit there, they let you do your job, they don't say anything, and then they're out. Patients are very, very talkative. They'll sit in your chair and they will talk from the time you begin the exam to the time you end. And even when you are walking them to the door, they will stand at that door and continue talking for minutes on end. Now, the thing is with this, a lot of the times when we're working in the medical field, a lot of our patients can be retired, senior citizen. Is that an offensive word? So they're older, they're living at home alone. This is their social hour when they come to the doctor. And it's just like, there are other patients waiting for me, sir, ma'am, boy, child. I enjoy talking to you though. You're sweet, but yeah. See you later. And then you have some nervous patients who, as soon as you open the door, start asking you questions. Or as soon as you get them, start asking you questions. And I've learned how to pick up on patients that are nervous, and I'll touch on that here shortly, what to do about those situations. And you do have to repeat yourself a lot in this field. Some people just aren't listening, I guess, or they don't comprehend, or they want you to give them a different answer than you are already giving them. For example, the classic question, what are my results? What does the ultrasound show? I cannot provide you with that information. Many patients do not want to accept that, so you have to go back and forth. Well, you don't have to. You do have to repeat yourself multiple times for them to get it, that you're not getting the results from me. Now, here are some workarounds. If you are an introvert, you're really interested in the field, already in the program, or already a sonographer. Here are some workarounds that are very feasible for introverts. Keep in mind there are a variety of shifts that you can work as a sonographer. You can work second shift or a third shift. I have worked both of those. I worked third shift, just PRN as needed. I did not feel drained emotionally working third shift. Now, I felt drained in other ways, but not emotionally, because most of the time I was by myself. It depends on the type of facility, how many people they have working, but a lot of times it's just one person, so you're working by yourself. You can set your own pace, get the patients as you please, and then the only people you have to talk to are the patients. You don't have to deal with as much of your coworkers. And sometimes with night shift, you might be doing inpatients that are asleep anyway, so they won't be talking. And not every patient wants to talk. It's just a few patients that will talk and talk and talk. I have worked second shift. I really enjoyed second shift, especially since I was new in as a vascular sonographer at that time. So the first half of my shift, if I had questions to ask my coworkers, then I could ask them those questions. I could get second opinion on an exam, and then I was too ready for them to leave. So then I could do my own thing, have the room to myself. I could go get the exams done in my own pace, and that was kind of like the best of both worlds. Now, if you work day shift, you still can survive. I'm currently working day shift. I'm surviving out here. And things that have made me feel way better when I'm at work is sometimes I don't sit with the rest of the techs. Sometimes I'll sit in a more quiet area. I'll make one if I need to, just to make sure I'm not drained by constantly being around people all day. Because you have to think, some of us have families to go home to. You might have a husband you want to cater to. You might just not want to feel emotionally drained yourself when you get home. So while you're at work, you don't want to use up all your social energy and have none when you get home. So there are different things you can do to conserve it. You don't have to engage with your coworkers all day long. I go around and say hello to everyone that I work with. And then if I really want to spice it up, I'll say, "How are you?" But I do that. So a lot of my coworkers feel comfortable around me. They feel like I'm approachable, but they don't get an attitude when they see me apart from everybody else, because I'm just doing my own thing. Y'all might want to be taking some notes, because I got some really good one-liners here. Here is my process to help reduce the expenditure of my social battery. First, I'll get the patient, introduce myself, and explain the exam process in a warm tone. Now, if they're a very nervous person, nervous Nelly, sometimes I can tell. As soon as I walk into the room or as soon as I get to the patient, they start spewing questions at me. Then I will go ahead and explain the full process from beginning to end of what I'm going to do and who will give them the exam results, because it ain't me up front. Whereas with other patients, I will explain each step as I go. Some people just cannot go with the flow, even though I do fully explain things to my patients. Now, during the exam, I don't like to talk a whole bunch. But if the patient is super talkative, they like talk. If it's distracting to me, I'm in control. So I can say, "Okay, sir, ma'am, we can't talk during this exam, but we can talk as soon as we finish." But some exams, like the carotid exam, you cannot talk during the exam. So, "Sir, ma'am, we can pick up our conversation as soon as we finish," or "I'll answer any questions as soon as we finish." Things like that. Now, if I have to ask them history questions, because some people like to have a story about every single question, what you can say is, "I have some yes or no questions to ask you. These are just yes or no. You can respond with yes or no. Do you take medicine for high blood pressure?" Or if you're doing OBGYN, do you take medicines for birth control? Things like that. Scripting is very powerful. So having lines in mind, exactly what you say for each type of exam to make sure that the patient is informed, that you guys are on the same page. You don't have to spend time going back and answering basic questions that with information that they should already know. And you hopefully don't have to repeat yourself as much if you follow your own scripting at the beginning of each exam or during each exam. So whenever I get the patient, explain the exam, I usually use a very warm tone so they know that I'm kind, I care about them. I'm just not going to talk a whole bunch during this exam because I need to be focused on what I'm doing. I do the exam, make sure they know who's going to be providing them with the results, when they should expect the results, and then say, bye, have a nice day, leave. That's my secret sauce. So that's it. You do not have to talk to everyone the whole time. You can realize that certain talking can distract you from what you're doing, and you can put a pause on those things. So, is sonography for introverts? I would say yes. You can be a sonographer and an introvert. I would say that this is feasible, but it can be challenging. You do need to know your workarounds. You do need to know your personal limits, what you can and cannot do. And believe me, I have actually considered trying to get into another field that might be better for introverts, but I have not found many jobs that pay the same and that really would be better for introverts. I think a lot of jobs are very challenging for introverts. And sonography, depending on how you go about it, could potentially be no different. I have considered taking a job in tech. I watched a day in the life of someone who works in tech, and she was doing a lot of coding. Then she still had to talk to coworkers. And then I saw her doing a Zoom meeting. I was like, a Zoom meeting? You gotta meet with other humans. This too much. So I was like, I might as well just stay with the job I got. There have been times, as soon as I got the patient, as soon as I opened the door, they have busted out crying. I'm like, did I say something? But no, they unload their emotions onto me. And then I feel obligated to help them sift through it. So not only do I work as a sonographer, sometimes I also work as a therapist before I start my exam. And no, I do not get additional pay for that extra service. So this is definitely something you've got to keep in mind. It can be emotionally taxing as a sonographer. Now, I want to know from you guys, do you think that becoming a sonographer as an introvert is possible for you? And if you already are a sonographer who's an introvert, what methods have you used to help you get through each day without feeling emotionally drained, having your social battery drained at the end of the day? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to keep the conversation going with you guys, and I'll see you in the next video.